Our story goes back many thousands of years. But let's begin in 1857, India's first war of independence. At the end of that war, one thing was very clear. The British had escaped defeat by the slimmest of chances, but they were not going to rule for long. They had been grievously weakened. In the late 19th century, it was also clear that if the then greatest colonial power was too weak to rule India, there would be no substitute. And India would have to be ruled by Indians. And there began a huge battle that is going on even today. Who will rule India? And what will the vision of India be? And what will be this India like? There are 5 major forces that emerged and still continue battling over the idea of India. 2 forces on the left and 2 forces on the right. And an interim arrangement in between, to which I will return. The 2 forces on the right are what we can call an economic right, which is a group of people that believe that India should become a free market capitalist economy. That should be the overarching objective for India and the vision of India as a free market economy. And the economic right and the social right that believed and still believe that India should be a Hindu Rashtra, a theocracy that will preserve the ancient Varna Vyavastha and the ancient social order of India. On the left, there was an economic left that believed that India should be a socialist, a Marxist, communist economy and a Marxist-based socialist country. And then there was the Dalit left, the movements of the Avarnas of India, the social reform movements, whose main aim was to build a polity where there would be no Varna Vyavastha, no hierarchical social order, no inequality of the kind that was being imposed on them and marginalized them. So we had the economic right and the social right, and the economic left and the social left. And another idea of India emerged, that we should provide a forum where all these 4 ideas can come together and sort out their differences peacefully and provide a palliative for all 4 forces. And that is what we've emerged in the form of the Indian National Congress. Congress means walk together, gress means move, con means together. So everyone moving together as a kind of interim arrangement. But that did not end the strife. The strife and these different, very powerful conflicting visions did not give up on their vision. They tried to use this middle space to defeat the other visions, competing visions, and assert their own vision. This is what we've been witnessing. Now, through this struggle, which started, as I said, in the late 19th century, progressed in the early 20th century, the Constituent Assembly meets on 9th December 1946, before our independence, established at that time during colonial rule, but soon to reassemble on the night of the 14th August 1947 as the repository of the sovereignty of India, as the repository of a sovereign power. That Constituent Assembly had in it a diverse set of people from various backgrounds. The only thing that was common amongst most of them was they were male and old. But other than that, they represented very conservative forces, economic, social, and political. But there was also a small group of progressive people representing the economic left and the social left, most prominently led by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and a small group of Dalit members from different parts of the country who had a very clear vision of what they wanted. They wanted a society where justice, social, economic, and political would be assured in a new social order, not just an economic and political order, but a new social order that they would construct. And this is the vision reflected in Article 38(1) of the Constitution of India. So these visions were present inside the Constituent Assembly. They worked together, and at the end of November 1949, they adopted a constitution which unanimously. Now, many of us look at this constitution and we think that it is some kind of a sort of religious document which has a clear idea that we must obey, like we obey religious diktat. And many of us say it is a progressive document, which it is, of course it is, but we ignore the fact that there are many elements in this constitution that came from a regressive Constituent Assembly. So when we look closely at this constitution, we find that the vision of all these four forces and the fifth integrative force are all reflected in the Constitution of India. But two things were very clear from the Constitution, on which there was a consensus. One was that we need a new India. All four forces wanted a new India. One may have wanted that new India to be a continuation of the old India, but they wanted to construct a new India where there would be no doubt that that new India would be guided not by any colonial or foreign ideas, but by the old Varna Vyavastha ideas. And the others wanted brand new ideas of India. The second thing was that there was a consensus that to construct this new India, we needed a new social order. And that's why Article 38(1), which is really the mandate of the Republic, says that the state shall promote the welfare of the people by securing as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political inform all institutions of national life. The emphasis was on the social order. So we could say that the consensus was that we need a new India and we need a new social order. So we are now not talking about the India that existed 5,000 years ago. We are talking of an India that came into existence in 1950 with the Constitution. The vision of India came into existence in 1950 in this Constitution. Now, inside this Constitution, as I said, all these four elements have their elements. There are what I would consider progressive elements. Most importantly, the idea of universal adult franchise, of parliamentary democracy based on one vote for one person. And the other very progressive idea, which does not exist in any other constitution to my knowledge, was a principle that Dr. Ambedkar was responsible to put into the constitution, that is codified in Article 16(4) of the Constitution, that every social class in this country is entitled to, has the right to adequate representation in public employment. And reservation as a tool for that, to ensure that. Why? Because their concern was that this new India should not continue to be dominated by an oligarchy of one or two communities or one or two social forces. So these powerful tools, then we have part 3 of the Constitution that gives us a variety of freedoms. In particular, 4 fundamental values became central to this progressive vision, which none of the other forces could oppose because they were so universal and so unexceptionable. And these 4 values are freedom, it's liberty, equality, dignity, and fraternity. Political systems, to safeguard these 4 human values, these 4 human aspirations, which are neither Western nor Eastern, nor Northern nor Southern. They are inherent to the human condition. They are the aspirations of every single human being. I want to be free, I want to be equal, I want dignity, and I want fraternity. These 4 fundamental human values to be supported by 3 political systems, namely democracy, socialism, and secularism. So this architecture was placed in there with the under the leadership of Dr. Ambedkar and Jawaharlal Nehru, but with the collaboration of the economic left and the social left together produced a dominant vision of this constitution. But inside the constitution, we find provisions for preventive detention, provisions for potentially creating a unitary state by dissolving states, as we have seen happen recently, and many other provisions that are really against the concepts of federalism, democracy, decentralization, and devolution, which are fundamental to this predominant vision. When we look back at the last 75 years, we find that the economic right and the social right initially were clashing with each other because the vision of the economic right is primarily modern. They want modern capitalism, modern ideas, whereas the vision of the economic right is regressive. They want to go back to an old society and maintain a feudal society. So they were not working together. But once globalization came in, the economic right and the social right have come together and become a very powerful combination. And when they once, especially after they have come together, since globalization began after the collapse of the Soviet Union and economic liberalization began, and in response to the threat created to the right, economic and social, by Mandel Commission and the reservation, the extension of reservation to the backward classes. Since the 1990s, the economic right and the social right have come together, and they have used the constitutional provisions and mechanisms and tools available to them very effectively to push back the egalitarian ideas of both the social left and the social right in all spheres. The economic left agenda has been severely pushed back by privatization, by liberalization, by erosion of workers' rights and labor rights, severely pushed back. Social right agenda has been severely pushed back by an erosion of reservations and the opportunities available to them, again through the same tools of privatization, taking away the opportunities for upward social and economic mobility that were created by these tools. So they have used the tools available to them within the constitutional framework to strengthen themselves and push back the idea of an egalitarian India. Central to this effort has been the work of the bureaucracy and the judiciary. The bureaucracy and the judiciary are heavily controlled by privileged communities, oligarchic communities at the highest levels, and many of them, not all of them, many of the individuals who are getting to occupy the positions in the judiciary and the bureaucracy are people who have internalized the agenda of economic liberalization and social regression and social deliberalization, the combined agenda of authoritarianism and economic liberalization and political authoritarianism, and have produced policies and jurisprudence that facilitate counterattack that we are seeing on the progressive agenda of India. Where the economic left and the social left have not succeeded and have failed is in understanding the tools of the Constitution. Understanding that a Constitution, especially the Indian Constitution, is not a holy book. It is a site of political struggle. It is a site of struggle. The Constitution provides you tools and weapons to engage in that struggle. If you use those weapons to your advantage, you will win the political battle. If you fail to do so, you will lose the political battle. But those weapons are malleable weapons. You can interpret them in different ways. They are like the weapons you see in video games. You know, they transform, they change into different weapons very rapidly. You have to learn how to use them and master them and use them for your own advantage. We have not done that. And so we instead of seeing the Constitution as some kind of holy book, we have to see the Constitution as a site of struggle, of political struggle, where we have tools and weapons given to us to all sides, and the challenges for us to engage in that struggle. Simply have those weapons being provided in that Constitution are not there. It's not a self-executing document. Simply because Article 19 says that every person shall have the right to freedom, of fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression, it's not self-executing. If someone takes away our right to speech and freedom of speech and expression, we have to struggle to protect it. The Constitution gives us Article 32 as a remedy to go to the Supreme Court directly, Article 226 to approach the High Court directly and seek to protect our rights. And if that doesn't work, we have to engage in public discourse and inform public opinion that our rights are being taken away and our rights are being diminished. And public opinion, ultimately, James Madison, the fourth president of the United States, and the Ambedkar of America, the father of the American Constitution, said once, very succinctly, he said, all government rests on public opinion. All government rests on public opinion. And therefore, ultimately, we have to ensure that the public understand that we are in the middle of a decisive struggle to shape the next millennium, not just 10 years or 15 years, that will decide whether the overhang of debilitating poverty that has hung over us for centuries can be ended for our future generations or not. And that struggle depends on how we fight the battles of today, whether we are going to be condemned to perpetual poverty and perpetual exploitation and perpetual subordination or not, depends on whether we will take this opportunity of having a few constitutional weapons and mechanisms, such as Part 3 of the Constitution, fundamental rights, a few opportunities to use them and to educate the public about them like we are doing now, and fight these battles to protect these very valuable aspirations that have emerged into our Constitution from our people's struggles. Our Constitution was not a gift from the founding fathers of our, not even founding mothers, but founding fathers of our nation. It was not a gift. The Constitution is the result of the blood, the sweat, the tears, and the suffering of the common people of this country, of millions and millions of people who struggled in thousands and thousands of movements to produce these values and find place for them in the Constitution. Produced an Ambedkar, produced a Dakshayani Velayathan, who could sit in that Constituent Assembly and demand that these rights must be in this Constitution in a manner that no one could refute. So these tools are there for us. We must take these tools. We must struggle to fight for this vision of a country where every individual, regardless of our birth, is entitled to the same freedom, the same equality, the same dignity, and the same right to fraternity as anyone else. This is not a dream for the rest of humanity. Why should it be a dream for 1,300 million Indians who still live under subordination, inequality, and oppression? And so, whether it is gender, whether it is caste, whether it is economic exploitation, we must fight these dehumanizing ideologies that justify these results, and we must move towards a new future, and we can do that by engaging in the struggle, using the space and the tools that the Constitution gives us.